Hey there, it's watercolor day. Hey, I'm Rusty Nelson and I am your college art professor. We are working on a landscape watercolor demo today of I think it's a scene. It's a scene. It looks like it might be a scene in Africa. So I think the tree in the distance is the giveaway. I didn't take note when I grabbed it. I just like the structure in the foreground and the tree sitting next to it. So let's get started on this little sucker. It should be an easy one, should be a down and dirty, mainly because we're just dealing with some simple geometric shapes for the building and some irregular shapes for the tree, and we should be able to crank this one out, and it's going to look great by the time we get done with it. So let's get started. All right, like I was saying, this little piece, we're going to be working with a series of small shapes. Rectangular shapes, looks like a 2-point perspective on the building. We're going to be very interpretive on what we're going to do with it. I'm not worried about a lot of detail in it, but I'm going to juice up the colors a little bit. I think the sky could be even a little more moodier, so I'm going to go after it and modify my piece in regards to the sky from the photograph, from the reference. I am working with a Bahong 300-pound cold press watercolor paper, so it's going to have a nice tooth to it, and I'm working with my Winsor Newton pan set, so a nice professional grade set of colors. I'm going to work with a couple of flats, fairly wide flats, an inch, 3/4 inch flats, some rounds right here. There's the rounds, and here's the flats. All right. Got an inch, I've got a 3/4 inch right there. And just in case, I have my mop right here, small little mop that might be nice for some textures and stuff. So, all right, so let's get started mixing up some colors, and we'll start out blocking the sky first. And what I'm thinking of doing is maybe running some sort of a diagonal dark striated color right through there. So it's going to be kind of more of an angry sky. So I'm going to get some of this. That looks like phthalo blue, and then there's a rich indigo. So that is super, super saturated, and I'm going to drop a little bit of this raw sienna into it right there. So we get a little more of a neutral gray, greenish gray. Those angry storms are always kind of a greenish color. All right. So I'm going to lay on the color first, wet on dry, and then as it's wet, I'm going to come in and introduce some diluted water, and we'll create some nice soft effects for the sky. So right in here, just going to come in and work around the tree a little bit. There we go. Nice irregular edges right up to the house. I'm going to get my other brush just with water, and I'm going to just introduce the water into it, and that's going to create some nice soft edges right where I want them. I'm going to pull that color right down here as well, and then we can introduce that color back in. It's going to have a very nice effect. I'm just switching between the loaded brush and the unloaded brush. Right there, there we go. Pop it right in on the tree, right in here. Don't have to be real fussy about the tree. We're going to come after it with some other colors. All right. Nice, angry looking thing. Unloaded brush again. Pop it right up there against the house. All right, I'm going to throw that color right up against the roof. There we go. Pull it down right over here like that. I want a nice crisp edge along the side of the house. And now I'm going to unload it again. Just water. Just dropping it in there. If I get some color blooms, that's okay. I'm kind of looking for that. Pull it down right here. Pull it down right along the edge. I'm going to pull that color right along in here as well. There we go. I'm going to get us a little tree action right there as well. All right. Cool. That is some saturated colors. Unload it, soften it up. There we go. Excellent. Right in there like that. All right. Biggest trick with this is not to overwork it. Threw a little more pigment in there. That's good. All right. And that's a really intense spot right there. I'm going to take my unloaded brush. I'm just going to lift a little bit right in there. It's a little too saturated. So we can do a little work like that. And I don't like that little spot right there. So I'm going to get a little more color right there. Just drop it in. There we go. Pull it over to the tree. Let it flow a little bit. There we go. All right, so we have a much moodier, stormier looking sky that we're going to work with here. I'm going to do a little dabbing, lifting a little bit of the excess water off of that. All right, and as that's drying, I'm going to soften that right there as well. There we go. And maybe just a smidge right back over here. So, oh, that looks like fun. All right, now I'm going to come in. I have a 1/2 inch flat that I got, and I'm going to block in some of the earth tones for the building, for the landscape. I'm going to start with a burnt. Now that's a raw umber right here, so I'm going to mix up a fairly healthy mixture of it. I'm going to mix some burnt sienna into it. There we go. Uh-oh, got a big chunk of it. Come here. Oh, there we go. All right, so a couple colors that we can intermix with each other. All right. And I'm going to avoid a lot of the wet spots on here. That's this is the good paper, so it's going to be a slow paper. So I'm just going to come in and just really kind of block in real quick some of the color that's going to be on the building. Try to get some color modulation, or at least a tone established that we can then work with other colors. If I want to, I could drop in some color like that. Really just using the photograph as a rough guide for the blocking. All right. So we got to have some nice colors coming in over here. Right off of that. And this is really just to establish a base color that we can work with the rest of it. So now I'm just looking at the tree. I've got some sharp edges on that tree. While I'm at it, I'm just going to soften them up just a little bit. Right over here. There we go. Again, more color. I'm going to vary color as I go. I'm also worried about the direction of the marks that I'm making. I'm trying to get a crunchiness to it with the dry brush. And then we have some textural components, some directional components that we can work with the foreground colors and everything. So and now I'm going to look for kind of a sepia color, or even this raw umber would work. I'm going to come right in here, get a little bit of that blue. I'm going to gray it up a little bit. All right, fairly thin. I just want a little bit of that right there for the roof. Right up there. All right, cool. Throw a little bit of it inside there. Get a little more of that blue. I'm just going to throw a little bit of it right in that shadow side, underneath side. We can pick out or find the highlights again later. I'm not in a big twist over that. And even if I was, let's say I didn't like that, I could just come in and lighten it up a little bit. Remember, it always dries lighter. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to get some greens. I'm going to get a fairly light green. Let me mix that up over here. We use this blue and that yellow ochre. We're going to get a little hot green, yellowish green going here. All right, and we'll just drop that in right up here real quick. Doesn't have to be overworked to any great extent. I'm going to try to hold back on my brush, clear back here like that, and I'm just going to kind of wiggle my brush just to get some of that irregular shape. All right, and it's very damp. Got some of that color transitioning into the sky. Now I'm going to get some darker colors, and we'll just drop them in. It's wet, it's going to flow, but it's like a sphere. So you got the darker foliage underneath all of the leaves. I'll throw a little bit up here like that. Get the different boughs of the tree. There we go. Maybe some over here. All right, so that's looking pretty cool. It's very wet, so it's going to be a very soft transition. So I might just stop a little bit and let it dry. So we've done a quick color blocking on this piece. Let it dry, and we're going to come after, we're going to find some sharper shapes, a little more saturation on the whole piece in stage 2, and then we'll let that dry, and then we'll come after some of all the little details and structural things that will really pull this piece together. So anyway, there it is. We've accomplished the color blocking and have established all the base colors for all the rest of the work. We'll come in stage 2, and we will add the little more saturation, and we'll start finding some shapes. Paint those shapes in, for instance, like the shape of the trunk of the tree and underneath shadows, things like that. And then stage 3, we'll come in and add all the detail in. So hang on, we'll get started in just a second. All right, so it's dried for a few minutes. The tree's still pretty wet, but I'm going to work around it. It shouldn't cause any problems. I'll go in and I'm going to start blocking in other shapes, a little more contrast, different colors, in trying to create a little more of a sense of the environment, the ground, the landscape, before we move into stage 3 and start really going after the detail. So let's get going. All right. Like I said, the tree's still pretty damp. Everything else has a nice dry to it already, so I'm just going to work around the tree. Actually have some nice color blooms happening here for the edge of the tree. I'm really liking that. So I think once we come in and add a little more contrast in there, it's going to pop those yellow greens out a little better. But because I added those blues in there, we've kind of got a mid-range green. So we'll see if we can rescue that. If not, we'll pop in and get some hotter colors on the back side of the process. So, all right, so I need to mix up some of this brown. I'll come right in here. Get a little bit of that yellow ochre in there, a little more of that brown, a little more of that sienna right there. I want to paint this this mound of dirt right here where the tree is, and then over here on this side, it's kind of a side that has the brown. I'll make directional marks in through here, and then this bank that kind of works its way around. So, all right, so here we go. And it's really going to be just kind of some real quick dry brushing that I'm going to make sure I define this edge right here. It's a very sharp edge, rocky edge, and we'll even kind of throw in maybe a little tufts of grass right up in here as well. Vary color just a little bit. We'll come down, pull it down right along here, and There we go. Yeah. There we go. Pull that around. There's a lot of irregular edges right in through here. We're just going to pull it up, work our way back up the hill, crunchy marks, a little more saturated color, and we're just finding our way, leading lines back up to the top of the hill, crunchy marks. I like those high little peekaboos coming out of the strokes. All right, I'm going to get a little hotter sienna right there. I'm going to throw a bit of it right down here. There we go. That foreground interacts right there. Cool. All right, and it becomes a lot more sienna as we move off over in this direction. So I'm just going to drop more of that in there, scrub it up. We're working our way back up that hill, right up into here. Okay, throw a little bit of it right over on this side too. Cool. All right, and then there's a very, very sienna field in the background. Right back here, I'm just going to scrub it over in a horizontal mark so it reads flat. Throw another one in, come in like that. Something right like that. I want to feather it out just a little bit. All right, I'll throw some green. We got a little green field right in here. It's very damp, so that's all right. It can be out of focus. Get a little more of that green. Right there, right there. All right, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to build that little tree line right up here. Okay. And we do have a tree right down in here. I'll just throw a little tree. If I can get the attitude of the tree just right. I'm going to pull that down, kind of a thing like that. I'm going to throw a little more of a brownish color underneath it. We got a nice shadow under it. All right there, there we go. We just do that. All right, so we got a nice little scene in the background happening. All right, I'm gonna actually throw just a bit of that green right here on this edge. And in some of these spots right over here. There we go. And as we're at it, I'm going to throw a little bit of it right up here with the foliage that's happening. Little contrast there, that didn't hurt one bit. Okay. Throw it right on the edge of that hillside coming up. We're just dealing with big shapes at this point. Also scrub a little bit right in through here. You can see it's still wet. It's been a while since I laid that color down, but it's still wet. It's still spreading. That's all right. I don't mind that. I'm going to throw a little more intense green right up here. There's a little bit of foliage right there. Just drop it down. intensify it on that edge a little bit right there. Cool. Alright, and I'm going to throw a little more right in there. Alright, so we're finding shapes. We're starting to create a sense of movement and direction on various things. I'm going to get a little more of that blue, a little of that brown right there. I'm going to paint the interior, the underneath side of this shed right here. Alright, I'm going to just try to work around some of the wooden beams. If I can, I'll just fake it in there as best I can. Come down, comes across. There we go. There we go. All right. So I'm painting in the negative right now. Cool. Again, just finding really rough general shapes. As long as it reads right, it's okay. Whether it's absolutely perfect or not, it doesn't matter. I'm going to pull in, come under here. Try to leave that little edge right there. We can deal with that later. Alright, I'm going to throw some brown in it now. Alright, and then I'm just going to pull it down and just let it flow down just a little bit. Alright, that's fun. And I'm going to get some more of this burnt umber. There's some sepia there. Alright, making a dirtier brown, a little more of a contrast color. And I'm just going to come in and use. Alright, so I'm just kind of building that bank again. Need some on this side. Just scrub it down. We're going to transition from shapes and textures into line for definition and structure. Alright, cool. Throw a little more of it right in through here. I'm going to do a little more dry brush. You'll scrub it in, a little more texture. There we go. Need bigger color right there. Just need to knock it back. So I just really flopped some water into it. And we're just going to knock that whole corner down in a big color wash. Knock down some of those highlights. Even do the same thing right here. We're already painted. Okay. Right in here. There we go. All right. Yeah, it gets really dark over here, but I want it soft. So it's just a thing where you want attention is where you maybe want more hard edge, more detail. There we go. That's reading pretty nice. I get a little more blue, a little more of that sepia right there, just for the contrast. All right, I'm going to come right along this edge. I'm just going to beef up this edge right here just a little bit. There we go. It's just going to be the darkest right under there where the foliage makes that transition. Alright. Alright, cool. Alright, throw a little there, right there. Just to transition from sharp into soft, right like that. A little more right up there. Didn't like that, so I'm just going to feather it out, soften it up. We'll deal with that later. Alright, so that's all drying. I'm going to throw a little more saturation on this ground right here. Just needs a little more textures to it. A little more saturated color. Color modulation. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to get a little more of that color. I'm going to get a little more structure onto the house now. So there's a door right under this. I'm just going to paint that big sepia colored thing right there. Again, I'll fix all of that next phase. Throw a little more color overall on that side. Just pull it down. There we go. Also want to put a little more right up on this roof right there, right down to where the lean-to comes out, the roof of the lean-to right there. And then I'm going to get some of this dark color. I'm going to paint the underneath side of this eave right there. Yeah. Sweet, there we go. I'm going to throw another one right over here. There we go. I'm going to paint that dark window in. Right there. Get more. I'm working with a number 3 round right now. So the tree has dried nicely. I'm going to come in here right now. I'm going to get the underneath side of this roof right here. And you can get very inventive with that. That doesn't have to be accurate to anything other than how it looks to an eye. I'm just going to throw a little more of that darkness right under that. There we go. That's looking good. I'm just going to add a little more structure right along this edge of the building. It's pretty damp yet, so a little darkness down there won't hurt. A little feathered darkness. That's looking good. That's pretty wet. I don't want to set my hand in it. Okay. Okay, I'm just softening that up a little bit. All right. Now there's a lot of color on this face, so I'm going to mix up some burnt sienna. I'm going to kind of scrub in a little more texture on the top portion here. Irregular shapes, just color. Even if it interacts a little bit with that dark color, that's fine. I'm going to get a nice Yellow ochre. Nope, that's the raw. That's the raw sienna. Again, just scrubbing a little more textures on this. All right, cool. Dry brushing it just for the textures. And I'm going to throw a little bit over here just for that lean-to there. I took a lot of liberties with the building, with how it actually looks versus what I drew. It just didn't matter if it was 100% accurate. All right, just popping a little more structure there. All right, that's looking pretty good. This is drying pretty nicely, but it still needs a little more crunch to it. So I'm going to get a little darker color, and now I'm going to drop in some dry brush shapes and textures. A lot of contrast. We'll just throw it along on this edge right here. Cool. That's looking pretty good. Everything's still pretty damp, so everywhere I'm working just seems to get pretty soft. So, but I'm just working around just to get a little more contrast onto the shapes. So when I do come in to start working some structure and detail, we'll be ready to go with it. All right. And while that's drying, the tree is dried nice. All right, I'm going to get a nice dark bluish green. Needs to get a little thicker. Let me get a little thicker color going here. All right. All right, so I'm going to do a little work on the tree. See if we can get it to read a little better. So it's not dense enough. So get a little darker green. Get some of that. Get some of this. There we go. There we go. All right, blue, green, dark, thick. All right, so I'm holding my brush back quite a ways. So I want an irregular shape. All right, so I'm going to try to scrub in the leaves. And if it's not enough, or if it's too much, if it's too sharp, I'll just soften it out a little bit. I just want to get that roundness to start happening. There we go. Right up under here. That's reading pretty well. All right, we'll bring it down. We'll come around to like this a little bit. There we go. Just going to scrub a little bit, get a little dry brush action going there. That'll read nice. A little textural. Again, trying to be irregular, trying to control it without making it look like I'm controlling it, right? So that is always the trick. Okay. Right down there on the roof. Pull a little more of it right there. All right, and then I'm going to soften some of it with a little water. Wherever it seems a little too sharp, we'll just knock it back a little bit. Okay. All right, and as that's drying, everything over here is still drying. We get a little more of that burnt umber, get a little thicker, denser looking color right there. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to paint the trunk of the tree. So I'm going to try to keep it in that same color feel. There we go. And we'll just pull it down, try to get branches to appear. Get that stump over here on that side of it. There we go. And again, I'm taking a lot of liberties. I'm just really using the photograph as a very general guide. There we go. Cool. So, getting the tree to work. Really getting a saturated color going here. All right. All right, now just kicking a little more saturation into it. Trees take a lot of practice. Keep them angular, keep them irregular, and they'll read right, in theory. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to come back in, get the darker portions of that underneath of the shed, right up in here. I'm going to get a little crunchier edge right there. Okay. I'm going to just suggest a little detail without painting detail. Cool. Same drill over here. Those horizontal strokes will just make it look like there's beams underneath there. I want to give a little structural work right there. Pull that edge down just a little bit. Little structure. Broken edge. Contrast on this one. Pull it on out. Pull it up. There we go. I'll make a little darker horizon right along that tree line right there. Irregular shapes. I'm going to do the same thing on this tree back here. Just a little contrast. Get a little better contrast and structure on it. Okay. And we're just bouncing around, popping in suggestions of detail, textures, all the nice little pieces that make it read right. I'm going to throw a little bit up here. Still a little damp there, not bad. All right. Cool. As you can see, as usual, whenever you start introducing the contrast, everything starts to pop. I need to add in some little posts. Throw a post or two in here. Alright, I'm going to throw a little bit of foliage and stems and branches right there. Cool. Alright, I've got a couple over here, leaning up against the wall. So I'm just doing a little drawing right now. Alright, and when all else fails, some splatters never hurt. If we get enough of it. There we go. That looks good. And when all else fails, too, I'm going to just throw a nice glaze of this yellow ochre onto this forward face, just to warm it up a little more. There we go. And I'm going to throw a little more of it right back here, right on that horizon line. Perfect. Back to my little brush, and I'm just going to touch around, get a range of little knots and shapes, textures. Just play around with it a little bit. Actually, I'm going to throw a little bit of a scrape right along that side right there. That looks good. I want to get that shadow under the thing right there. All right, and we really have done a quick little study of this savanna landscape with a little structure. Didn't take hardly any time. It'd be enough to give you a little study that you could then take and work with if you wanted to take it into a larger piece. And that's a lot of times the structure of these little studies do just that. They give you just enough information that you can then really come in and intensify. I'm just going to put a little more contrast on that edge right there. I just want that to pop a little more. Get a little more on that tree. And a little more up there. Okay. And as usual, whenever I get to focusing on making it look good, I quit talking. And then there's dead air. That might be a blessing. Alright, so anyway, nice little study. Landscapes, and you know, really, if anything, watercolor got me into landscapes. They were not high on my to-do list before I started painting with watercolor. I just never did feel like I could capture a landscape, because they are difficult if you're not really focused in on them. They can look pretty stale and stuffy if you don't really get a good process and understanding of whatever media you're painting with. But it's definitely the gateway for me into painting landscapes was working with watercolor. So, and if I want, I could even come in and let's get a little more of this color, get a little more of that green. All right, I'm just going to glaze a little more green in that tree. Looks more eucalyptus and African, I think. So just throw a little more overall yellow into it, even into those little white peekaboos. There we go. All right, there we go. We have a nice little scene with a structure in it. We have some trees in it, foliage, uneven textures, you know, just a lot of really free form watercolor work along with the structural work that's on the building itself. But it's all very loose, very expressive. It's a great way to study and get loosened up with your technique before you start committing to some better artwork. So do a lot of these. You could do these daily just as an exercise, a practice, so that when you do get into working with the big pieces, you're already tuned up and ready to go on that. So give it a try. Another landscape. It's watercolor day. I hope you enjoyed this. If you got any value out of this tutorial, please give me a like and a subscribe. Head over to my Patreon channel if you think I'm doing anything worth a damn on this channel. Give me a $5 a month membership. I do truly appreciate it. And hopefully soon there will be more added benefits for that $5 a month membership. So I'm working on it. And if you head over into the video descriptions, I have all sorts of links for watercolor, paintbrushes, markers, ink pens, pencils, everything out there under the sun. They're Amazon links. So if you do buy anything from using those links, remember I get a small commission for any of the purchases that you make on Amazon there. Riley method, Loomis method, and some Bridgman method figure drawing and face drawing information out on my website as well. So head over there, download that stuff. It's a great read. It's like we didn't invent the wheel here. Those guys already did it. So download them, get into them. They'll keep you busy. And hopefully you get them read before summer starts. So, hey, I hope to see you in the next tutorial.